much, Suresh. Thank you, and really, really pleased to be here today. Thank you for taking up your time. I think that in terms of the importance of corporate responsibility and sustainability cannot be underestimated. Earlier this week, we were reminded about the population reaching that magical 8 billion. Which is a phenomenal number, and therefore sustainability has become a lot more key focus in terms of as a career, and an important subject to obviously make sure that we can get people involved as much as possible. As Suresh has said, my name is John Martin. I look after the Central London hub for the ICRS, Institute of Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability. We're a growing organization in terms of what we do, and we're really encouraging people to get involved. You know, the key aspect here is to ensure we've got that interactivity and make sure that it's not really a lecture, because that's not the objective, and really wanting to be able to show the career possibilities even greater in terms of what we need to do. So thank you very much for your time, and very, very pleased to have a distinguished guests and panelists here today, all phenomenal people in their own rights and big organizations. As we know, the world is changing quite rapidly. So therefore, humanity is faced with an array of challenges, and that's really what we need to do. And obviously, talking to people that are on the ground, that are doing it as part of their day job, doing it as a career, that's the practical side of the profession. From the climate crisis and ecosystem collapse to inequality and human rights issues, it can be hard to know where to start. And really the key objective here today is to get some sort of signposting for a career in sustainability, and obviously the options that you have. So we all have a role to play. I don't think that we could be in a situation that we exclude. We really want to get as many people involved. And therefore ask the question, and the simple question is, have you ever wondered how you can make a CR and S a career? It's a wide area, it's a wide topic area, and I think that in terms of what we do, to be able to sort of support people and give some signposting, as I said earlier, absolutely fantastic. So we're going to hear from the panel. We've got a number of questions that we're going to ask, and really just wanting to set the scene. We'll do that for about 40-45 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session after that for about 20 minutes, which I'm going to ask Lucy to coordinate, and we'll get some responses on a system known as Menti, and do that. But really welcome to everybody involved in being enlightened here today. So thank you very much, panelists, and really good to introduce everybody. Simone at the end there from Aviva. Everybody knows the brand Aviva, right? So really good. Thank you, Simone. Marie from CBRE, Investment Management. CBRE, as you know, fairly well entrenched in the, let's say, retail, not retail sector, but the infrastructure sector. So really good to have that diversity. Madeline, I hesitated there because I almost said Madeleine again. I just got that sort of feeling of saying Madeleine. But Madeline, thank you very much from Growing Sustainability, and I know that you've got a connection to the university, which is absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much, Professor Anthony Woodman. Thank you. As I think most people will know who you are, but just thank you very much for supporting us today. Really good to have you. And then lastly, Lydia Parnell from Turner and Townsend. Thank you very much for your presence and again supporting us from that perspective. So really good to introduce everybody, and as I said, thank you very much for your time. What we're going to do is, I've got, as I said, there'll be a number of questions that that we need to go through, just in terms of setting the scene, because I think it's important, from that perspective, is to understand the key focus here today is really to drive the career aspect and make sure that obviously we've got that visibility around starting a career. So therefore, welcome panelists. Thank you very much. My first question, I'm just going to take a seat actually, because I get tiring sitting down. Can everybody still hear me? Is that all right? It's quite a directional mic, but really good. So thank you very much for that. I think let's start off in the very beginning, because obviously, as I said earlier, sustainability and corporate responsibility as a career it's got such a wide remit. It's quite difficult to sort of get that inertia going, get that understanding, and the starting point. So really, from my perspective, is I would ask the panel, and this is a general question, and starting with yourself, Simone. If we can just pass that down there. Just keep that roving mic. I think the first question there is just in terms of where I'm coming from is what prompted you to pursue a career or teaching discipline in corporate responsibility? I think just basically introducing yourself, and then the first question there. Thank you.
Yeah, so thanks, John. As you said, I'm a sustainability manager at Aviva. In case anybody doesn't know what Aviva is, it's an insurance, pensions and investment company. So I got into sustainability from actually joining a graduate program going into Aviva. And I didn't actually know I wanted to do sustainability at that point. I was put in quite a generic team within general insurance. But I was doing quite a lot of things side of desk, one of them being a domestic abuse awareness program for people at Aviva, and a couple of other things. And the people around me picked up that it was that sort of social responsibility element was something that I really enjoyed. So for my next rotation, because you have rotational aspects on the graduate scheme, they asked me if I wanted to do a sustainability role. And as I said, I didn't know much about it at the time, but very quickly after getting into it, I realized I was really energized by what I was doing, and it was the same feeling I got from the side of desk projects I was doing in my other role. So it just, I realized it's where I wanted to be. So I think even if it's not something that you absolutely know you want to do, but you've got a feeling, it's really worth exploring that and trying different things to bring that out so that you can go explore that career path if it is for you.
Thank you, Simone. Thank you. Marie, do you want to, same question in terms of introducing yourself, and then, why did you pursue the career, and just giving a bit of guidelines in that regard? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. My name is Mari, and as John said, I'm from CBRE Investment Management. I worked there for about 3 years, but before that, kind of zooming all the way back to when I was thinking about what do I want to be when I grow up. At 10 years old, I had a conversation with my career advisor in school, and they said, what types of things do you enjoy? And I said, climate change, I find that really interesting. And they said, you can't have a career in that. That's not an option. And I think it was that point in time that I realized that's what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to prove you wrong. And me sitting here today, I want to say that kind of did prove them wrong. But zooming forward a little bit again, I did environmental sciences in my undergrad, kind of setting myself up for understanding sciences. Then went into an internship in the oil and gas company, trying to kind of evangelize about doing sustainable investments, doing good for the world. And they, although they understood my point, didn't seem to sort of actually take action on that. So then I started thinking, what can I do to make people make the right decisions? And that brought me to where I am today, working in finance, speaking a little bit of the finance language, but also understanding the science has really allowed me to bridge that gap to make sustainability a career where the investment professionals that I work with do want to make the right decisions from a sustainability perspective, but also from an investment perspective.
Fantastic, thank you, Marie. Really, really interesting. Thank you, and like the attitude, absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that. Do you want to pass the microphone, Madeleine? Do you want to?
I love that proving you wrong point of view. So Madeleine from Grain Sustainability. So I'm a director at a sustainability consultancy. And we work mostly with businesses and some organizations like trade associations to help them create their sustainability strategies. Grain is a B Corp, and our mission is to help businesses become champions for people and the planet. So from starting way back when, I did always like science and maths. And when I went to uni, I first stepped into the environmental sciences department at Brown in America. And I thought, this is what I want to do, but then I realized there was a lot more chemistry and less tree hugging than I expected. So I ended up having a major in visual arts and in art history. So I sort of went down that path. I started work as a graphic designer, went into branding. I worked for Gucci Group for a while. And after I'd been at Gucci for a while, I thought, I'm not really happy working in luxury. It's not my world. I want to go do something else. So I thought I'll do branding, so leave the luxury world, keep on doing graphic design and branding. But that stayed in luxury. And then I left that next company again, so it was my own design agency. I left that company thinking, okay, now I'm going to just do design somehow in a green way for purpose-led companies. Again, that didn't quite work, so I thought, use environmentally friendly printing or something like that. So again, it was sort of another attempt at somehow working in the creative industries, but in a purpose-led way. But it was a little bit before people were talking about purpose-led business. So this is sort of around 2009 or so. And then finally, after a few more years, we were working more and more with brand strategy, communications, doing more and more projects in sort of sustainable areas. So for example, naming and branding a compostable plastic, naming and branding a circular economy, so sort of a sharing economy company which does handbag rentals. And then eventually, a few years ago, we decided to focus completely on sustainability consulting. So we brought in experts in the field, and now about 95% of our work is sustainability consulting. And it's just, so it's come from a very roundabout way, but I have to say, it's just fantastic to be working in this field, and I'm very, very grateful to be working as a sustainability consultant.
Thank you very much, Madeleine. And I think really evident in just in what we've heard so far is the diversity of the coming into the career. I think is really interesting. Obviously, the big word there is the passion. I think obviously in terms of this career, you've got to have that passion. That really makes the big difference. Professor Woodman, you want to give us?
Well, I feel the biggest fraud of everybody because. I don't have a background at all in sustainability. In fact, I'm a cancer biologist by background. However, I guess I hope that by the example I'm going to give, it shows there's even hope for dinosaurs like me around sustainability. Because a couple of years ago, as part of my role here as Deputy Vice Chancellor, I think they must have thought that I needed something to occupy my summer. So they said, Anthony, we're doing this great decarbonisation project. £5 million to be spent in 6 months doing ground source, air source, and photovoltaic panels on the roof across 3 campuses in West London. Remember, this is in 2021, so we've still got COVID going on and a few other bits and pieces. And what actually happened by being involved with that project, I'm very lucky. There were some absolutely fantastic people in UWL around sustainability. But what I actually was able to see firsthand was, one, what alternatives could do to actually make our business better, more effective and efficient. But very pertinent with this afternoon was I was frustrated by the lack of talent that we could call on in the UK, both to advise us, both to manufacture, both to install. And there's nothing wrong with the talent we got, particularly from Scandinavia and the Netherlands. But it showed me the huge opportunity, therefore, for careers, and it's one of the areas I'm delighted that I oversee within the university. But also by being involved firsthand, I now put it down to saying we had the foresight to know that gas prices were going to go through the roof and everything, so that's why we went to alternatives. But actually was that self-learning by being involved with a project like that. So hopefully I may come from a slightly different perspective, but I'm certainly have no environmental training. Nazrin, our environmental sustainability manager, is here. She has far more training in it, and luckily I have people like that who can, don't say that, Anthony, that's not going to be sustainable. But if you act like that, that might help. So hopefully the diversity will work with me as well, John.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Professor. Really good. Obviously, it's enlightening, to, from a leadership perspective, to to drive that forward and make it a key theme in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, just the microphone. Lydia, do you want to give us your intro? How did you get into the profession and the career?
Well, it's good to hear that other people across the panel had a little bit of a wiggly route into corporate responsibility, sustainability, because I definitely had. When I left uni, right in the middle of the financial crash, I was like, how am I going to get a living? And what I'd seen was that my mum and dad had very vocational courses and careers where they were caring for people. So I really want to do something where I get the same value out of my day-to-day that my mum and dad got. So I knew that. I wanted a stable job, and I wanted one where I felt like I was coming home going, I've made a bit of a difference here. So I moved initially into the charity sector. I did an MA in international development. And increasingly, the charity sector on the whole, internationally, nationally, does wonderful, wonderful work. And there are great, great people working within it. I kept finding that I was finding myself in corporate partnerships type roles and realizing that actually businesses have huge amounts of resources, huge amounts of opportunity to do the right thing in the world, and they need to. Because if they don't, they're not going to be around in 20, 30 years' time because the world expects so much more of them. So I moved from the charity sector then into kind of a quasi-consultancy called Business in the Community, and I worked with sort of, global national brands like Unilever and Coca-Cola, etc., kind of what it meant to be a responsible business. And then about 5 years ago, I went, you know what, I need to practice what I preach. So Turner and Townsend, where I work now, employed me as their corporate responsibility manager. And I really like T&T, not only because of what they tried to do with their clients. So they work with the professional services company, they work with the built environment. So if you know the Shard, anyone came on the Elizabeth line, they did all the sort of cost management and project management of those. But they also, and increasingly, are looking at how do we make all of those massive projects sustainable, environmentally sustainable, socially sustainable, how do we make it work for local communities economically? So my role is to help our client-facing teams do more of that and to really think about what's the value you can bring to society, but also ensuring the business practices what it preaches. So whatever we're telling our clients to do, we should be doing too. And I get huge amounts of value from that kind of collaboration, constantly learning and growing, which I can hear from people's stories across the panel is the same. And I'm addicted as a result. So that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Lydia, and really, really good, obviously, to hear your story. I mean, I was quite fortunate yesterday to talk to a good friend of mine at the UN. He's just got back from COP27. And the first question I asked him, just in sort of reconnecting, I said to him, what do you consider to be the biggest challenge? He looks after the financial initiative, so basically the development of TCFD for the sectors and obviously the regulatory requirements that are forthcoming. And I said to him, what is the key challenge that you believe? And he just got off the plane from Sharm el-Sheikh, and he said to me, internal skills and external development, and those are the first thing that he said to me. So obviously to encourage, to make sure that we've obviously got that aspect of in terms of promoting what skills are available, what do you need. So my sort of question to the panel is just in looking at sort of formal qualifications, because I believe that most people in the room are obviously going to be looking at what formal qualifications do you think I need, and I'm make that an open question just in terms of what do we think as a panel, and obviously some of the questions that will come in afterwards. So in terms of looking at it from a training perspective, what sort of formal qualifications do we think we need based on what you know? And that's really an open question to the panel. Anybody want to give that a go? Simone, do you?
I mean, as I said, I came into sustainability not knowing what I wanted to do, so this might be a bit of a cop-out answer, but I think that if it's something that you want to explore, you may not necessarily have to have a qualification first to get into it. I think if there's an area you're really interested in and you know that's what you want to do and specialize in, then by all means, go out there, see if you can find something specific, or just look at something general. Like I've spoken to quite a few people today that are doing masters in like just broad corporate responsibility and sustainability. For me personally, I didn't take that route, and it's worked out well. I'm not saying that will work for everybody, but I think don't be caught up thinking you can't apply for a role because you don't have a qualification in sustainability. Qualifications in sustainability are probably quite new. They certainly didn't have that many of them when I was getting into it. So I wouldn't let it hold you back and say I'm not going to start getting involved in the job market and looking for roles because I don't have a qualification. But equally, do look at what's out there if you've got something specific. I'll say that to kick it off.
Fantastic, thanks, Simone. Really interesting. Anybody else want to give it a go? Just in terms of formal qualifications, any other thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Also, seeing our background, I think it is a question of there are more and more degrees out there now, particularly at the master's level. There are even some undergraduate degrees. But I think it also needs to be said that there are so many different areas that from which you can access careers in sustainability. So it could be law, for example. So there's, from in-house legal counsel to nonprofits like Client Earth, who are using law to essentially defend the planet. We find that more in terms of soft skills, things like communication and writing. I mean, we do cover communications as well, but there's so much stakeholder engagement which is necessary in sustainability because you're looking at value chains, and so having that ability to communicate well is really essential. And of course, all of the sciences, if you're getting into the more technical aspects around carbon footprinting or whatever it might be, there's innovation, engineering, there's so many ways to get into it. But I would say on the formal side, there's definitely not one route, and you can get into it from almost any degree, I would say.
Fantastic, thanks, Madeleine. And again, I think that really interesting to hear that no prescriptive kind of channel. I think it's really having that passion to do something and make a bit of a difference. Anyway, Lydia, do you want to go, or Professor, do you want to?
Only was to quickly really follow on from Madeleine's point there that actually, I mean, what we're doing currently here is that every single one of our degrees will have elements around sustainability. CSR has to. I mean, we're not giving our students the best opportunity if we don't provide that training. So I think it depends on whether you're going to be absolutely really deep into developing the whole area yourselves, or as we look forward to that, everyone is responsible for taking this forward, is to ensure that any degree that you're currently studying has more than just lip service to the whole area, and certainly that's something we're doing. And I think as we move forward, and it may come up in some other questions, how education providers, including universities, work with the industry to ensure that we have the right accreditations around what we're doing. And a big one you'll hear from me a lot today is that we ensure that the government recognizes that graduates coming out into this area are professionals and need to be recognized at the area. You could take me on one of my hobby horses. Next time you go on a flight, and as the flight leaves and the door closes and there's someone wearing their high vis who's been doing quite a lot of maths, the government doesn't believe that person is a graduate job. Now, I don't quite see that myself. And so I have one of the fears that we need to ensure that that doesn't happen with the jobs that come through in this area. So it all links into that agenda, I think.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Professor. Lydia, any thoughts in terms of that from yourself? And quite nicely leading us to the next sort of topic of discussion. But do you want to have any thoughts from yourself?
Of course, I suppose, as we've said, there are professional qualifications that you can do. There are university degrees, whether that is specific or whether that is integrated within the agenda. But just to reiterate really a point that Simone said, which is so many skills are transferable. So even if you're not doing a corporate responsibility degree, it is so integrated within the sorts of skills that we need within an industry because, as Madeleine has said, it's growing. There are so many skills that we need that it's finding ways to be able to continue to stay abreast of the agendas that are arising. So when I first started in the industry, a lot of CSR was community focused. Actually, I'm spending most of my time now on net zero and ED&I agendas. And so if you're a person who is wanting to work with others, wanting to learn and grow, and sees themselves as being somebody who wants to make some kind of change, then actually there are lots of different routes and qualifications and skills that apply.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Lydia. Really interesting to obviously get that insight from your perspective. I suppose the next question, the real challenge, and I think that's would be useful to know, is just in terms of looking at it from an extracurricular activity. So the volunteering side, it's a big aspect in terms of what people do. You can go into a volunteering scenario, which obviously gives you a feel for what the career would look like. Obviously, if you've got a passion for something specific, then that's absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, my next question really is, obviously the importance of extracurricular activity and volunteering is fundamental. I think we all accept the fact that the volunteering sector and let's say the established government in terms of all respects, obviously have a reliance on the volunteering sector. I look after the strategy for Wiltshire Air Ambulance, and obviously I do that as a passion, of mine. So we volunteer, for raising funds for the medical service. But really, just in terms of understanding, where you'd be coming from in terms of volunteering, the encouragement, and what sort of avenues you would recommend in terms of getting into doing something on the volunteering side. Anybody want to have a go at that? Madeline, I'm getting...
Well, the first thing it makes me think of is Grain is a member of 1% for the Planet, which is a non-profit co-founded by Yvonne Chenard of Patagonia in 2002, and the other co-founder was, I think his name was Dave Matthews of Blue Ribbon Flies. So it's a non-profit through which companies give 1% of their turnover to environmental non-profits. So not profit, but 1% of turnover. And that's, so personally, I'm on the UK and Ireland steering committee for that. And so, I give my time to 1% as a non-profit. In terms of the volunteering sector and charity, it's definitely a route to go, because I think the area of sustainability is one that is, the word passion has come up. It's something around personal belief a lot of times that, that we have an obligation to help our planet and to help people. So I think it is something that's maybe felt more than other careers could be felt, possibly. So that it does tie in with volunteering and other activities. And it gives you a view into, we haven't really talked about sectors in terms of private sector versus government versus non-profits, for example, but it could give you a view into the non-profit world and how that works and how these different areas need to work together to bring forward the agenda around sustainability.
Fantastic, thanks, Madeleine. And obviously, as I said earlier, just in terms of looking at it from the wide spectrum that sustainability, corporate responsibility, the exists. You're obviously using volunteering as a vehicle to get something that you're really passionate about, I think is fundamental. And I think, my firm belief, if you're passionate about something, you're going to do it really well because you enjoy doing it. So, I mean, any other comments from anybody on the volunteering side, Marie?
I think in terms of volunteering, there's so many things that you can do, but a really core part of sustainability is complex thinking and understanding the problems that specific sectors and specific companies are exposed to. So when I was a student, I was, to be fair, doing a sustainability degree. However, I found that in order to be able to find a profession, to find a job in sustainability, I needed to tailor my skill set to fit that industry a little bit better. And that, for me, and it's not necessarily the only way of doing it, started by networking. So I actually volunteered to create networking events. I was hosting a sustainability event for students, and we were inviting speakers like us today or other people from other organizations, and really facilitating the right conversations. And that, to be fair, was a kind of volunteering event, but it turned into a networking opportunity and got me to a place where I could talk to the people that are now employing me, which is fantastic. So it's all about trying to understand the problems and the challenges that type of industry is facing, whether you do that through active hands-on experience or whether you do that through conversations. That gives you a starting point, a launch pad, if you like, into figuring out what you need to learn to get into that type of job, that type of industry. Because sustainability is very different between one type of company and the other. So I think it's important to also recognize that difference as well.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Marie. So really interesting. So, Simone, do you want to?
Sorry, just to pick up on what Marie said there, because it triggered something in my mind, that one of the things I've done lots of recently is going to ESG, so environmental social governance events and sustainability events, and doing that networking. And I've learned so much from doing that, because as I said, I hadn't done a professional qualification. But what I've picked up from talking to people and going to panel events and talks has really, really helped me. And a lot of them were free as well. I was really surprised at how much stuff I didn't have to pay for. So if you, have a quick Google and see what's out there. And I think, as you said, do some networking and go to some talks on stuff, and that can be really helpful.
Excellent. Thanks, Simone. And just as an initial question, and again, I think really just leading on from volunteering and that sector in terms of getting involved. I mean, if you were today, wanting to look for a CRNS role specifically, because obviously we're talking about career choices, so we need to be quite specific, and obviously it's hopefully going to be long term. But I mean, what would you say would have the greatest positive impact? What if you were looking for a specific role, is there anything that really is highlighted by using the positive impact or the degree of positivity around making a real difference? Because we hear that quite a lot of I want to make a difference, etc., etc. But I mean, if you were looking for a role today, what would you be looking for in terms of its characteristics? Anybody?
I'm going to throw the question right back out at everybody, because I think the thing about impact is that it's different for so many people. In my role, a lot of it is about that change of the business, because I think that if you can change the way the business operates, you're going to change the way that it can have positive impact, not just tomorrow, but over the long term. But what that does mean is that I'm very removed from us creating meaningful change in individual people's lives. I'm very, very removed from the work that we do in order to address our environmental footprint. So a lot of my stuff is creating presentations for the exec board. It's doing policies and creating processes for my client-facing teams. Whereas when I speak to people within the team who are leading on our community programs, who are supporting our people to volunteer every day, they're seeing that very tangible change that they're making in individual people's lives. That's what gets them up in the morning. The same for parts of the team who look at our environmental footprint. They get up in the morning to understand what reams of paper we've been looking at or been able to reduce in our Johannesburg office, and they absolutely love it. So I think when you're talking about positive impact and change, you really, really need to understand what is it that you are passionate about and gets you up in the morning, because that will translate then to the kind of career choice that you will make around sustainability, is my view. But do other people across the panel have a...
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Lydia.
If I can build on what you said, because I think that was... I don't know if you guys have heard about a concept of ikigai. It's a very millennial thing, I'm aware of that, but it's basically a concept of where do you find your passion? And a lot of that comes down to what do you see as important, but it's also overlapping with what's your skill set. Not everyone is a mathematician, not everyone is a presenter, and that's perfectly okay, but it's finding that intersection of what does society need. There's a lot of things that society needs when it comes to sustainability. What are you really passionate about? And what type of skill set can you apply to find that intersection between all three of them allows you to find the most impactful area for you as an individual. For me, that might be Excel spreadsheets. I love Excel spreadsheets. However, I know that's not other people's passion, so that's not necessarily their impact area. But for me to be able to drive analyses to help and tell that story of what does all this data tell the decision makers, that's my passion. That's where I create impact. But it's different for everyone, and I think that's, thanks. It's really important.
Fantastic, thanks, Marie. Anybody else want to had any other thoughts, any input?
I completely agree. You have to find something that's energizing for you. It's an area I always was a bit scared of working in the area because I thought I'll just be depressed all the time. And actually, it is energizing because you see that how many other people are working in this area. You do have to look out for good news, and sometimes I just think I'm just going to stop looking at the newspaper because it is depressing. But at least you're doing something about it. And I did have another thought I wanted to share, but I forgot what it was now. Anyone have anything while I remember what I was going to say about impact? No.
No,
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll say it if I remember it later.
No problem at all. I suppose it really sort of moves on to really my sort of next question, just in terms of understanding whether there is access to resources, because resources is obviously, a lot of people here sort of lots of questions. Do we feel as a panel that there is a distinct lack of visibility around resourcing and getting into this career as a career choice? Do we think that there's a lot more can be done? I'm assuming that the answer to that question is probably yes, because there's always more that can be done. But for me, just as an open question, do we feel generally that there's a distinct lack of visibility around what resources are available to get into the career and make that choice, as a panel?
I'm just going to hijack this for a second because I still have the mic in my hand and I remember what I was going to say. is that there's a listing on, I think it's on the website, it's the conversation, and it lists the GDP of different countries and the revenue of different businesses. And basically businesses outrank, if you compare countries to businesses, it's very important to work with business, and it's slower to work with countries. So that's sort of the choice that we made, was working in the business side. But of course, in terms of impact, you can get it from anywhere. I think just working in the field is the most important thing. So sorry, resources answer anybody?
Fantastic, thank you. So looking at resources, yeah.
I come from the angle of being able to encourage people to come through to have the training in the area, and I think the answer absolutely is yes, John, because it's about how much noise we're making about the roles, what they look like. As universities, we have a big responsibility there, because remember, we're ivory towers, and our courses. Are we evolving things quick enough? You design a course now to go, look, today is really important. I could go away to the office and go, right, get a team in. We're going to have a whole new suite of courses. By the time they've gone through the process, they've gone on the market, and the federal graduates come, they're going to be into the wrong roles and resources. So it's getting the right profile, it's getting the right iterations, I think, certainly with us as education providers. We're just part of that process to help nurture the talent through to go into those roles. We're probably not visible enough in shouting about what we're doing, and we're only going to do that if we work more in partnership. So that's what today is about, being able to work more in partnership with a number of other organisations and agencies.
Fantastic, thanks. Thanks very much, Professor. Anybody else? Any other comments? Simone, anything from yourself? Resources, I mean, from your perspective, do you feel that the organisation that you're involved in, obviously there's massive resources, I mean, and we're not putting you on the spot, of course, but I mean, do you feel that just generally in the marketplace that there could be a lot more visibility around what's available?
Yes, I think, we can do a lot better at talking about what we're doing as companies and organisations, and what we're looking for from the talent that's coming in. I know at Aviva, all the graduates that we've had come in recently, they want to know more about sustainability. Like, we're one of the first teams they'll reach out to, drop an email to, say, can we have a virtual coffee? I really want to know what you're doing. Sustainability means a lot to me. And that's increased a lot, since my graduate intake a few years ago. So it's definitely important to the world and to people coming in. I think maybe the fact that these graduates are having to come to us and ask what they can do for us perhaps suggests that we need to be better at putting out what we want from them and giving them more opportunities. So there's definitely stuff that we can do on it, and it's stuff that has been raised internally and hopefully externally through events like this as well, because there's clearly a lot of people out there that want to get into the industry and know what they need to do that. So we can definitely get better at organisations at putting that out.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Simone. So really, obviously, the key there is just in understanding the fact that resources are available. It's obviously you've got to find the right, look in the right places and do the right things, and people that can support. Obviously, as the professor mentioned, in terms of academic institutions supporting that. Obviously, the private sector, making resources available. And I think that there's a general awakening of requirements. I think that overall, I think organisations are beginning to believe that they need to do the right thing more and more. And from my perspective, any other comments on the resources? Anybody else that wants to? Any last words before we go into the final question?
Just a very quick one from my side, but we've mentioned a few times that sustainability as a profession, as a career, is quite new, and so is the resources that come with it. So when you're looking for resources to understand what is sustainability, you'll get about 50 different options in Google going in very different directions. But what we're seeing at the moment is that there actually is a bit of a convergence with these things. We get one net zero standard, we get one standard for this, we get one standard from that. Last year, there were 10 different standards, let's say. So going forward, I think we are moving as an industry, as a sustainability industry, we're moving in the right direction on agreeing on what the definition of a lot of these terms are, which means that it will be easier for you to find resources as well. But that's also to say that when you're doing that research on what type of industry do you want to go into, try to research a little bit more specific to that, because whilst there are kind of commonly recognized frameworks that are very important across all industries, there are definitely going to be areas that your specific industry will be focusing on much more than other ones. And internally in companies, that might be through an internal ambassador scheme. We're launching an ESG or sustainability ambassador scheme at the moment to try to make sure that people that aren't in the sustainability career but still have that passion to make a difference when it comes to climate change or social issues or anything that's within the kind of circle of sustainability, that they still have an outlet for doing that and have access to those resources without having to spend all of the time at home researching that themselves. So it's really just kind of giving them that platform, to giving them the opportunity to do that themselves.
Fantastic, thank you. Lydia? No, absolutely.
I will get told off if I don't mention that as part of the Aspire Hub committee, as part of the ICRS, I do a lot of work with the brilliant committee members, many of whom are in the room, to see how can we make the industry more accessible for people who are joining it. So do have a look at the ICRS website. There's an absolutely brilliant tool that gives you these are the skills that you might need for the industry depending on where you want to go. So have a look at that. I don't know about everyone else on the panel, but I've found that sustainability just ekes into my everyday. So I'll be in the supermarket and you'll look at the supermarket and things like the fish there, and it'll be responsibly sourced. Go, oh, that's really cool. And then I'll have a look at what that particular supermarket's doing. So just keeping a top of what are in different companies doing all the time, I think is really useful, because then you get a sense of, okay, this is what I like about this is what I don't like about this, and therefore this is where I want to work. As well, I'm not a TikToker, shows my age, but I am an Instagrammer, and I'm just following endless amounts of sustainability people on Instagram just to see what do they think about a particular brand, whether that is client, customer facing or otherwise. So just being part of the day-to-day conversation on social media, I think, is useful. I know Mari and I were talking about the fact that the number of roles that we're seeing now on LinkedIn that has something around ESG or sustainability or community is growing exponentially. They might be becoming more niche, and I know we might be getting onto that in a moment, but signing up to LinkedIn, getting that notifications of what kind of roles are out there, again, gives you a sense of these are the people who are really taking it seriously. These are the kind of roles that could be applicable to me, so that, in 2-3 years' time, when you'll be leaving university or thinking about making the change, you'll know you'll be ready because you've got the skill set that you've seen has been required.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Lydia, and really good to hear that insight. I think that my final question, obviously timing is coming to a close from that perspective, but just my sort of, looking at, and it's always good to look at the crystal ball, right, and see what's sort of down the line. I think most people always, think about the future. Obviously, the future is something that we've obviously got to take into consideration. So just in terms of from a panel perspective, if we were looking at sustainability professionals and what they'd be doing in 5 to 10 years' time, it could even be more than that, but really would be interested to hear your thoughts very briefly around what you think sustainability professionals will be doing in 5 or 10 years. I think is a really good ending point for this discussion. Anybody want to grab that? Anybody?
So I've got a couple of stats here that Sophie, our junior consultant, looked up for us. She did a similar talk actually for Unifrog for some secondary school teachers recently. So there's a survey from Bupa, and it says that among Gen Z, 1 in 3 would turn down a job opportunity, and 54% would be willing to take a pay cut for the sake of ESG concerns. So I think the generation that's coming into the workforce is, they want their employer to be aligned with their values. They want to be doing work that they really believe in. And there is there are more roles like head of sustainability, or sort of, the chief sustainability officer, something that might not have existed a few years ago, is now a sort of typical role. So there are more and more roles in sustainability, and it's just becoming an underlying feature, a bit like HR or finance. It's something that's expected of every company. So there's more and more opportunity out there all the time.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Madeline. Professor, yeah.
I think if we were really honest, we don't know what we're going to need in 10 years' time. I mean, I think if we look back through the pandemic, we look back through how the acknowledgement of the impact we're having on the planet has changed in the last 10 years and has brought us to where we are today. So I think it comes back to a theme I think you've been hearing so far, is that take advantage where you can get an understanding, you can embed yourself, whether that's through volunteering, whether that's through going on free courses, but maintain the best gift of all, which is flexibility, and be ready to move those together. And I think that is something you shouldn't be fearful of. It's very easy, and I meant to hear as a professor say, oh yes, you have a very clear career path. I've never had a career path in the whole of my career. Retrofitting it, very nice. CV looks like it had a great career path. Never had it. And that is even more important now, that you embrace that I think we support that, because I was also looking over, I think, useful crib sheet, this one from Madeline here, was about, 2 in 3 Gen Zs being anxious about environmental issues, but also within that wider, the anxiety in the planet in which we live is having a real impact on people's mental health. So I think one of the things to do to help work with that is to go, flexibility is good. Flexibility is going to provide you the answers, and actually it's maybe a very woolly answer, but actually that may get us to where we need to be in 10 years.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Professor. Really, really good. Simone?
I was having this conversation with a couple of people over lunch. I think, nobody has a crystal ball. We're not sure what we're going to need to do. But definitely over the next few years, we're going to be seeing a lot more of how a circular economy can work in practice and how different businesses are going to have to fit into that model. I think as well, at some point, looking at how businesses can grow in a way that's not focused on profit, which all businesses, well, most businesses still are at the moment. So maybe there's going to have to be a few more conversations about logistically what that would look like, a world not focused on profit, but still growth. But I think those are sort of the two ones that, from my perspective, I can see on the horizon. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other things coming in terms of different crises that we're going to run into because, unfortunately, of the way that we live at the moment. So, lots of conversations to come, but not to be doom and gloom. I'm sure we can take them on.
Fantastic. Thanks, Simone. Marie?
So we don't know what's happening in the future, but what we do know is that the skills that we in the sustainability teams are breeding today and trying to kind of expand into the other teams, those are skills that everyone are going to have to learn, whether you're a sustainability professional or whether you're not. And we're seeing that within our company quite significantly at the moment. Everyone is coming to us, how do I do this? How do I decarbonize my asset? How do I look at climate resilience for my buildings? We do only real estate investments, which is why I'm using that example. But realistically, that also means that the role of the sustainability professional, the role of the sustainability team will also change, because we're teaching all these other people how to think, how to consider these other elements. The role at the sustainability team is going to transition into more of a risk management focus, much more about the technical understanding of the science that you can then translate into whichever language, whether that be finance, whether that be legal terms, whether that be whichever one is applicable to you, and make that something that you can translate the important bit into an actionable item for the teams that will be doing the work on the ground. So I think our role is to be an enabler. We're here to inspire, but we're also here to enable people, give them the skills, give them the right information to take this forward and make the right decisions themselves. So I don't think we're going to be obsolete in no way, shape or form. This is probably one of the safest career paths that I see at the moment, but it's just going to be one that continuously changes, and we would have to keep up with the changes both in terms of the role and also in terms of the topics that are being discussed.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Marie. Lydia, any last comments from yourself before we move into a summary and then our Q&A session?
Of course, I'll keep it really brief because I think that the answers here have been phenomenal. I think that all of the pressures that we want businesses to address are impacting our businesses day to day and their bottom line phenomenally. So if businesses aren't coping and adapting to the change that we're seeing in climate change, they're not going to have a supply chain in 20 years' time. If they're not becoming decent employers who are looking around a range of different skill sets and bringing in lots and lots of different people from across our communities, then they're not going to be an employer that people want to work for. So it's absolutely in their best interest and commercial interest to do the right thing to remain relevant in 10, 20 years' time. And I think what the panel has articulated so well is that, you know, CSR was something that was a bolt-on. You know, it was a volunteer day once a year. Everybody felt lovely about it. They paint a wall that's been painted about 10 times, feel great, and then go to the pub. That's very, very different now in terms of our roles, as Mari has said, and picking up about the circular economy, is we are shifting the way businesses operate because they need to change. So how that will happen and what those roles will look like, difficult to say. But is it here to stay? Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Lydia. Really good to end that off. Just in terms of summary, then, I think you know, the three words that really sort of pick out from the conversation are really good. You know, good insight from the panel. Embrace. I think I like the word embrace. I think that's a fundamental on you know, moving forward. I think the other aspect is flexibility. Because obviously, you know, the adapting to change is again going to become a fundamental requirement in terms of success. And I think, Lydia, you brought that out quite strongly on, you know, on your comment there. So really important, and obviously grab the opportunity, because, you know, from my perspective, it's and I think everybody's perspective actually, you know, changing world. We certainly you know, going to have significant challenges ahead. I mean, that's the way that the world turns. So grabbing the opportunity, you know, seize the moment, I think is a fundamental, and I really come across quite strongly in terms of that. So really, please, thank you very much for input there. Again, just from my perspective, and again, just to get a bit of sales talk in, from an ICRS perspective in terms of the Central London Hub and ICRS overall, you know, from a student perspective, we actually have free membership. So if you want to join the ICRS for membership, I think it's, you know, quite important. My colleagues at the back there will guide you in terms of the link to that, and really join us, because we're an interesting bunch of people. We talk a lot of interesting things, and I think really it would be great to obviously have that diversity of thought, you know, from that perspective. So on that basis, I will hand over to Lucy. Lucy, thank you very much, and from the Q&A perspective, thank you very much.
Thanks so much, John, and thank you so much, panelists, for a fantastic discussion. Now it's over to you guys. We would love to hear your questions for our panelists, both in the room, so please do raise your hands, and we have some people here with microphones who will come and grab your thoughts. And then online, hopefully you'll be able to see on your screen that there is a link to menti.com where you can ask your questions online using the code 65333526. So do take a minute to log on there, and we would love to hear your questions online. And they will pop up on my screen here, so we'll be referring to those throughout this session. So over to you guys. We would love to hear your perspectives. Please do raise your hand, and we will go from there. Who's going to be brave? Excellent. Right at the back there.
Hi, everybody. Am I audible? This one? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for that wonderful discussion first. So, talking about change in careers. So, when organizations hire sustainability professionals, are they all looking for experienced professionals when it comes to slightly senior positions? Because I am a chartered accountant from India who's had 10 years of experience. I am transitioning into sustainability, and I am a fresher in this area. So when I look for a job, I can't go through the graduate route. But if I look at jobs at LinkedIn and everywhere, it's always they are asking for prior experience in sustainability, and I don't have that. So what kind of options do I have if I want to venture into sustainable field as a working professional?
Thanks so much. Who would like to take that question from our panel? Any volunteers? Thank you.
Sorry, I'll give it a go. I think one of the themes that's come out of the panel has been, while you're in the world of work, there are so many opportunities to work in your businesses to create change. You know, the internal corporate responsibility, sustainability teams are really small, and they're looking for people who can help to charge environmental sustainability, who can be part of our networks that talk about ED&I, and also that support our communities as well. So while it may be difficult to find, go straight to make that jump, what is really important is that while you're in a career that you are, an accountant at the time, what are the ways that you can help your business at that point to become more responsible? Because experience doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have been in the department itself. It means that actually you've helped that department, you've got that sort of understanding and knowledge about what businesses are facing in terms of their challenges. So that would be my recommendation to you, so to see how you can get involved in your current employer's responsible business practices.
Thanks so much. Anyone else like to? Madeline, do you look like you're leaning in?
So a couple of things. One is, one of our consultants is a chartered accountant, and he was trying to retire, and we sort of dragged him out of his attempt to retire. So we met, so I did a course called Business Sustainability Management with the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. So there are some short courses like that, which are quite good, that give you, maybe not experience, but give you more exposure to the area. And it's obviously something to put on your CV as well. And then coming, this sort of idea of sustainability being an underlying service, you might say, within a business. So there's a role to play. If say an FD of a company really understands the role of sustainability initiatives in risk management and how does that fit into the budget, that's a really valuable role to play. And then another area, as with an accountancy background, is to possibly look for non-executive director roles, or trustee of a charity, because that profile is really sought after in terms of NEDs or trustees. So you could be working in that sector and gaining some experience that way.
That's great. Thank you so much. Excellent. Any other questions in the room? Who would like to? We've got one over there.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Not a student anymore either. One question, maybe more for Simone and Mary and Lydia. Would you mind opening a little window into your daily working lives to share how do you prioritize environmental versus social needs? I'm coming from a charity background and working in the social enterprise sector at the moment. With headline issues, COP27 and now G20, how do you make sure you're doing the right thing?
Hi, Sarah. So at Aviva, we're lucky to have quite a big team. So we have teams that go across we've got 3 key pillars. So we've got climate action, which includes environment, biodiversity, stronger communities, which I guess is the S within ESG, the social aspect, so volunteering, things like that, and supporting like small, medium enterprises and startups. And then we have a sustainable business pillar, which is like human rights, diversity and inclusion, employee engagement. And we do it holistically. Well, that's what we're trying to do anyway. So there is no element of prioritizing. I think perhaps when we first started, there was a big push on climate because it was like fashionable. Everybody was focusing on climate. Very quickly, we realized that you do need to have a holistic approach, and it isn't about prioritizing one over the other. They really are interlinked and need to be worked on together to be truly sustainable. So yeah, I think obviously, if you're a smaller business and you have to prioritize because of the nature of your work, that's probably very, very difficult. And you maybe need to do sort of a materiality analysis. So see what's most prevalent to your business and go from that perspective. But if you can do it holistically, that's definitely the best approach if you can do that.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, it comes down to what can you as a business influence, what can you impact? So as a real estate manager, we in CBRE Investment Management do have the impact to give people housing in a socially equal way. We can make sure that the way that we allocate the affordable housing availability within our assets is done in a good way. But realistically, it also comes down to a lot of what we can control is not the asset itself or what the activity within the asset is or the building is. It's much more about how are those assets performing and those investments performing. And for us, from a real estate perspective, that comes down to where is it located physically and what is the performance, how much energy is it consuming, how much water, that sort of stuff. But then there's also that consideration of a lot of the issues that we're considering as a business when it comes to climate mitigation, ultimately, like you said, is kind of a social issue. So even though it starts off as a physical concern, the actual impact itself is social. So then you're kind of knocking two birds with one stone here, of focusing on that one issue. So it's a bit of prioritization, but it's also understanding the full range of implications of one specific issue that or whichever issues that you're focusing on might be impacting. Do you want to add,
Lydia? I suppose I talked about my career journey before, and I definitely started the world of work with an idealist mindset. You know, that everything that you did, it was going to have a positive impact. Would love to be able to create a very holistic impact across all things. Having lead the agenda at Turner & Townsend for 5 years now, we're seeing so much legislation come our way that we have to respond to. We've got so many different people within our industry, in our company, who expect different things from that company. And also we've got external factors. So, climate change has been a big thing over the last 2-3 years, quite rightly. Black Lives Matter movement really kind of put the ED&I agenda at the forefront of businesses' minds. So I think going back to a point that Anthony made, you have to be a bit of a realist in the roles that you work in, because there are a lot of different people who have different ideas around what impact needs to happen now. And it's your responsibility to go, what can we practically and tangibly do now? And what are the things that might take a little bit more time? I think brilliantly we are maturing around sustainability. We aren't seeing it as siloed as we once did. But there's still a lot of work that a lot of organisations and individuals need to do on that agenda. So you do have to be a little bit of a realist and be resilient to know, okay, I can't make the impact on this particular agenda today, but definitely going to do it tomorrow in a year's time.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Maybe if I could add something there, because I think really important, obviously, from the perspective, and just picking up on your question. I'm a chartered accountant as well, and I think that as in the finance world, we're taught to sort of think things in terms of year ends, quarter ends, half year. I think the important thing from this perspective is to we need to change people's behaviours. And changing people's behaviours, picking up on your excellent question on that side, it takes time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. I think, purely from the perspective of thinking that profit is bad is not a good starting point, because, you need to provide that incentive, for people to continue to be interested. Obviously, from a career perspective, we all need to make a living. So, the reality of the situation is such that, profit is not bad. Just we need to really sort of rethink the status quo and find that balance, really important. So, again, just on the human behaviour side, it's not something that we're going to change in 3 easy steps. We've got to understand, the cost to the environment, just on one aspect of it. And I think, picking up on your point, Lydia, in terms of being realistic, I think is a good starting point. So, really interesting there. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for that question. There's actually one question that's coming online, which I'd love to pose to our panellists, which is, with such complex challenges to face in the corporate sustainability and responsibility world, we need different perspectives in that. How do we ensure that we get that diversity of talent within CS&R, and so it doesn't just become the same old people doing the same old things over time? So I'd love to pose that to you guys.
I think it's about sort of events like this and broader, about encouraging younger people coming into the business about how great this area is and how energizing it is, if it's something that you want to work in. Obviously, we don't want to pressure everybody to come into it, but to highlight what's great about it and to see if it does align with what you want to do. And I think the same way to increase diversity in all different industries, really, to make sure that we've got sort of outreach programs and are reaching lots of different groups of people when doing these sort of events and when encouraging people to get into the industry. There is, at the top, I'm sure is the case for every business, a real shortage of diverse talent. So as this is sort of, sustainability is new and emerging, we probably have a really unique opportunity to do this right and do this well, to reach out in the beginning to different diverse groups of talent to get the word out. So I think by doing more of that, we could, hopefully by the time you all move up into your careers and come to the sort of the top of the business, we'll have a much more diverse pool of talent, which will help us with sustainability.
Thank you so much. Who else would like to add to that? Mary?
I think that's exactly what we have to do when it comes to creating more talent coming into the industry. But in terms of in our daily life, as a sustainability professional, it's also my responsibility to ensure that I've spoken to the right people within the company and external to the company to make the right decisions in my day job. So what that looks like for me is that I need to make sure that before we make any big decisions on sustainability in the company, I would like a representative group, not just the ESG team, not just the sustainability professionals, but a representative group from the whole company to have a say on this. That means, as the saying goes, you've got 2 ears, 1 mouth. You need to listen twice as much as you actually talk yourself. So to have listening tours around the company, make sure every group of the company has been heard when it comes to function, when it comes to gender, when it comes to background, when it comes to race. A lot of these things is underestimated how important that is to get the perspective from different people and their backgrounds. So both when it comes to seniors, but also when it comes to juniors within the company. And of course, as a professional and as a sustainability person, I need to also broaden my own horizons. And that's why days like today, when I'm also attending events that I'm listening to, seeking the right people on Instagram, I thought that was a really good mention earlier. I need to make sure that I'm fueling myself and making sure that my input is diverse, not just from one type of source.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. Any other questions in the room? Oh, yeah, whoever you get to first.
Hello. So how would you describe incoming graduates and the way that they were recruited? So I mean LinkedIn, Indeed, in person, a colleague, an aunt, and their skills and interests and language abilities, because from what I understand, you specifically point to the fact that you don't necessarily have to be specialized in sustainability. So what makes people stand out? Let me throw in another question in there. Specialized in sustainability myself, sustainability policy, I've come to wonder how being an international student plays a role in your companies. And yeah, I mean, I went to a school full of Chevening scholars, international people mostly, because CSR, sustainability, to me it seems that it appeals more to international students. So how do international students play a role in the sustainability market in the UK? Yeah.
Thank you so much. So 2 questions there. One is what can make people stand out in their applications, and linked to that, actually, we had a question online about personal qualities that we should have as sustainability professionals. So that'd be one. And then the second around international applicants and how that plays a role in recruitment.
So as a owner and director of a small consultancy, so we don't use recruiters for recruiting, but we do. Generally, people find us because it's the same way that our clients find us. They find us online. And so we value when people get in touch, when they have that initiative. We've now put up a careers page on our site, which is a bit of a filter because it asks people to answer 3 different questions. So if we get an application and they haven't found the careers page, we already know they haven't found the page. Whereas if we get one and the questions are answered, it's already like, okay, we've passed that first step of at least answering the 3 questions. But it was also interesting in terms of when we were going through our own B Corp assessment, looking at diversity and not taking for granted that people would be looking for applicants through something like LinkedIn. So we had a Kickstart employee for a while. There's a question with B Corp, do you hire X ex-prisoners, I don't know if it's ex-felons or ex-prisoners, but it's sort of, not everybody is looking for a job on LinkedIn, and especially if you're trying to get a more diverse workforce, you might want, as an employer, you might want to look beyond LinkedIn as well. So I'm not saying at all not to be on LinkedIn, but just from an employer's perspective, there are different ways to hire people. In terms of being international, again, we really value international people and backgrounds. Our team is quite international. And going back to job applications, it's the sort of soft skills, the communication skills again. How is that, what is your cover letter, your cover email site, what is your CV? You've probably heard this all before, but just that, following up, finding the right person to send the application to, rather than just a sort of blanket email. Or the worst of all is the sort of BCC, or not the BCC email, but the CC email to 100 different places. That's like, you just can't, then you're just banned for life, basically. So I think there's sort of best practices in terms of job hunting out there.
That's wonderful, thank you. Simone?
Just quickly, I was going to add that if you're going for a specific role, doing sort of the blanket approach, I get why sometimes you need to do that to see what jobs people aren't advertising for. But if it's a specific role, in order to stand out, just make sure that your language matches the job description. So what they've asked for, what the skills that they're looking for, make sure your CV or your cover letter really brings that out, and that you're using similar terminology. Because it's really important to make sure that the people you're interviewing have the relevant experience before you even get in the room. So that's one way you can stand out, just making sure the language is consistent with the posting and your CV.
Thank you so much. Lovely. I don't want to eat too much into our networking time, given how we've heard the importance of networking during the panel. So maybe one more question from the room, and then you can save your rest for the discussion. Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. I recently came into sustainability, I'd say like a couple of weeks back. So I applied for a job as a data analyst, and I was shocked to find out that the role was more specific to ESG and sustainability. So I came all the way from Sunderland. I studied in the University of Sunderland, and I would like to say a comment. I'd like to see if the institute, ICRS, can go a step further in making it easier for people to come into sustainability by having like what they call a body of knowledge, a book of knowledge. So a way that there's like a kind of defined path for people to go through. One of the reasons why I came here today was to try and network with data analysts in this field, so I can know what to expect when I eventually come into the position. I'd like to thank the organizers also. It's been a very good event. Thank you.
Thank you so much. John, I don't know if you want to comment on that from ICRS's perspective at all. There we go. We've got ICRS in the room, so they can.
So just because Hello. I'm Greg, I'm the ICRS coordinator, so I work on everything in the background, sort of making sure the ICRS is moving. We actually do have a framework, so there's if you ever look on the ICRS website, there's a framework there, and you can use that to kind of benchmark where you're at, work on your skills, and look towards becoming a kind of a well-accomplished, sustainable and rounded generalist sustainability practitioner. So have a look on the website, it's icrs.info. And have a look at the framework that's on there, because that will give you an idea of how you should kind of look at skills and developing those over your career. So,
thanks so much, Greg, and thank you everyone for your questions to our panelists. I'll hand back to John now, but just before we do that, if we can have the slide up, that would be really helpful. We would love to hear your perspectives on today, and with Menti, you can actually post your comments on what's your key takeaway from today. So just a few words that will highlight that. It's not popping on the screen yet, so I think online you should be able to see it. But if you do have your phones there, you can look at Menti. Oh, here we go. There we go. Menti.com. So if you do fancy just logging on there quickly, that would be fantastic. And using the code 65333526, and just posting maybe one thing that's really struck you about today, one thing you'll take away from the discussion, and we'll look to share some of those insights to our ICRS members across the piece, and that will also help us to shape future events as well. So thank you so much, and just handing back to John now.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and really good. Thank again for your time today. I really like that thought, book of life. I think that's really given an idea, and thank you obviously for bringing it up. But again, I think my final thanks before we move next door to to have some tea and a bit of cake is really to thank the panel. I think they're absolutely fantastic. Thank you for your time and insight in terms of what we said. And I think we've really had a good, insightful and overall good good questions there. I think really, as I said, I mean, the word that rings quite strongly are two words, actually: embrace and flexibility. And I think that, from that perspective, it's really, really good. So thank you very much for your time. Obviously, invite next door if you want to have a cup of tea and some cake, set everything up. But really good. Thank you, and fantastic. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.